Hello.
Hi, Dawn. How are you feeling?
Didn't get the second.
Let me say that one more time. We're still in First Samuel, although you haven't missed too much. Kind of in the doldrums. We'll probably be able to finish this next week, I hope. And there's more shenanigans between David and Saul, as I think last time we spoke a bit about. I'm staring at this editorial note here about how David went in to pray, and it's just another example of how David has Yahweh or the Lord on his side, and Saul no longer does. And that's kind of where we left off. So we're starting on chapter 25. We're going to meet a new character, which might mean while somebody's reading, I might go grab my women's Bible and see what it has to say about her. Her name is Abigail. So chapter 25 of 1 Samuel. Here, I'm going to read from the Common English Bible. Now Samuel died, and all Israel gathered to mourn for him. They buried him at his home in Ramah. David then left and went down to the Maon wilderness. There was a man in Maon who did business in Carmel. He was a very important man and owned 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. At that time, he was shearing his sheep in Carmel. The man's name was Nabal, and his wife's name was Abigail. She was an intelligent and attractive woman, but her husband was a hard man who did evil things. He was a Calebite. While in the wilderness, David heard that Nabal was shearing his sheep. So David sent 10 servants, telling them, "Go up to Carmel, and when you get to Nabal, greet him for me. Say this to him: 'Peace to you, your household, and all that is yours. I've heard that you are now shearing sheep. As you know, your shepherds were with us in the wilderness. We didn't mistreat them. Moreover, the whole time they were at Carmel, nothing of theirs went missing. Ask your servants, they will tell you the same. So please receive these young men favorably, because we've come on a special day. Please give whatever you have on hand to your servants and to your son David.' When David's young men arrived, they said all this to Nabal on David's behalf. Then they waited. But Nabal answered David's servants, 'Who is David? Who is Jesse's son? There are all sorts of slaves running away from their masters these days. Why should I take my bread, my water, and the meat I've butchered from my shearers and give it to people who came here from who knows where?' So David's young servants turned around and went back the way they came. When they arrived, they reported every word of this to David. Then David said to his soldiers, 'All of you, strap on your swords.' So each of them strapped on their swords, and David did the same. Nearly 400 men went up with David. 200 men remained back with the supplies. One of Nabal's servants told his wife, Abigail, 'David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he just yelled at them. But the men were very good to us and didn't mistreat us. Nothing of ours went missing the whole time we were out with them in the fields. In fact, the whole time we were with them watching our sheep, there was a protective wall around us both night and day. Think about that and see what you can do, because trouble is coming for our master and his whole household. But he's such a despicable person. No one can speak to him.' Abigail quickly took 200 loaves of bread, 2 skins of wine, 5 sheep ready for cooking, 5 seahs of roasted grain, 100 raisin cakes, and 200 fig cakes. She loaded all this on donkeys and told her servants, 'Go on ahead of me. I'll be right behind you.' But she did not tell her husband Nabal. As she was riding her donkey going down a trail on the hillside, David and his soldiers appeared, descending towards her, and she met up with them. David had just been saying, 'What a waste of time, guarding all this man's stuff in the wilderness so that nothing of his went missing. He has repaid me evil instead of good. May God deal harshly with me, David, and worse still, if I leave alive even one single male belonging to him come morning.' When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and fell face down before him, bowing low to the ground. She fell at his feet and said, 'Put the blame on me, my master, but please let me, your servant, speak to you directly. Please listen to what your servant has to say. Please, my master, pay no attention to this despicable man, Nabal. He's exactly what his name says he is. His name means fool, and he is foolish. But I myself, your servant, didn't see the young men that you, my master, sent. I pledge, my master, as surely as the Lord lives, and as long as you live, that the Lord has held you back from bloodshed and taking vengeance into your own hands. But now let your enemies and those who seek to harm my master be exactly like Nabal. Here is a gift which your servant has brought to my master. Please let it be given to the young men who follow you, my master. Please forgive any offense by your servant. The Lord will definitely make an enduring dynasty for my master because my master fights the Lord's battles, and nothing evil will be found in you throughout your lifetime. If someone chases after you and tries to kill you, my master, then your life will be bound up securely in the bundle of life by the Lord your God. But he will fling away your enemies' lives as the pout of a sling. When the Lord has done for my master all the good things he has promised you and has installed you as Israel's leader, don't let this be a blot or burden on my master's conscience, that you shed blood needlessly, or that my master took vengeance into his own hands. When the Lord has done good things for my master, please remember your servant. And I'm going to pause there because it's a very lengthy chapter. I need a break for water. And there's a lot going on. So first and foremost, again, the Bible is answering questions that no one was asking, which is, how did this man get to be named Nabal? And so you kind of have this backwards way in. It's been set up from the moment he was introduced to what a jerk he is, or foolish as the Hebrew word is. And I have a flag. This does not go down in history as one of the most important moments in Scripture, but just so you know, euphemisms abound and vulgarity, much like the hemorrhoids earlier in 1 Samuel abound. And David's little fit that he's having in verses 20 to 22 has this curious phrase. I want to see what your translations say. 22, may God deal harshly with me, David, and worse still, if I leave alive even one single male belonging to him come morning. The actual Hebrew is one who urinates on a wall.
Oh my gosh.
In case there's any, he's talking about men. So there you go. But in a very derogatory way. Yeah, go ahead.
I have the Woman's Bible.
Huh?
And so did you want to know a little bit about what it says about Abigail?
I would love to, yes.
Okay, well, it calls her a
Yes, ma'am.
wise woman. That's how it starts out about her.
Huh?
And it says 200 armed men marched towards her. They were dirty, smelly, hungry from weeks in the desert, and very angry. Abigail, in an act of steely courage, knelt face down in the dirt and implored forgiveness. Her husband was the cause of this terrifying threat of revenge against her entire household. This is certainly not the first time Abigail had to think fast to cover her husband's bad behavior. He was a fool. Even his name meant fool. But whatever he was her husband. She asked David to put the blame on her. Her quick thinking to gather food for David's army reflected in her intelligence, her assessment of David's character, and his relationship with the Lord. And then it goes on to say when he died, David quickly called, when her husband died, David quickly called Abigail to his side to become his wife. Without a backward glance, Abigail left her life of wealth to be with the man on the run.
Yeah.
And then it does a candid shot. It said, David said to Abigail, praise to be the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you today to meet me. May you be blessed for your good judgment and for keeping me from bloodshed.
So yeah, thank you for reading that. I love that version, that book. If anyone wants to get their hands on, I know Barb has it too. The CEB Women's Bible doesn't have all the footnotes you would find in a study Bible, but you get these editorials from all the female editors who will interrupt every time there's you see the little blurb. Yeah, exactly. All about her. Wonderful. Yeah. But at the same time, you kind of wear your 21st century hat and you go, oh, she should just throw Nabal under the rug, or let him deal with his own. But marriage was a bit difficult and different back then, and she kind of does her part more for the marriage than she does for her husband, I think.
For her family.
Family, exactly, yeah. But in the end, she kind of makes a believer in her out of David. And I almost think too, she's probably finding, boy, she just has the best luck with men. Here she, the one who's going to be her next husband, she runs into, and he's out there shouting expletives about men peeing on walls. So, what else in this passage kind of stuck out to you? Anyone?
One thing I saw was that Nabal wasn't willing to give food to a foreigner, and it just reminded me of what goes on in our own country and around the world, where with foreigners coming into other countries and people not wanting to take care of them,
Yeah.
even though he was the king, but still.
My editorial footnotes here say Abigail's lengthy speech from verses 24 to 31 is a masterpiece of shrewd diplomacy to avert a disaster. There you go. Speech is widely regarded as one of the finest examples of effective argument in the Bible and secures her place as a wise woman in contrast to her foolish husband. So the writer, the composer of this text, is obviously telling a bit of a kind of weaving a fable kind of about with those rhymes, fable about Nabal and Abigail, but it's mostly to kind of play on the idea of one is the fool and the other one is very wise or shrewd. All right, would anyone like to read 32 to the end of the chapter? Different translation, maybe?
I can do a message. Let me get it.
Okay, go for it.
At 32.
30, yeah. So chapter 25, and then it's verse 32. To say something
Okay.
about David talking
Yep.
to Abigail. Great.
Okay, and this is the message.
Great.
And David said, "Blessed be God, the God of Israel. He sent you to meet me, and blessed be your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and taking charge of those out for me. A close call. As God lives, the God of Israel, who keeps me from hurting you, if you had not come as quickly as you did, stopping me in my tracks, by morning there would have been nothing left of Nabal but dead meat." Then David accepted the gift she brought him and said, "Return home in peace. I've heard what you've said, and I'll do what you've asked." When Abigail got home, she found Nabal presiding over a huge banquet. He was in high spirits and very, very drunk. So she didn't tell him anything of what she'd done until morning. But in the morning, after Nabal had sobered up, she told him the whole story. Right then and there, he had a heart attack and fell into a coma. About 10 days later, God finished him off and he died.
Wow.
When David heard that Nabal was dead, he said, "Blessed be God who has stood up for me against Nabal's insults, kept me from an evil act, and let Nabal's evil boomerang back on him." Then David sent for Abigail to tell her that he wanted her for his wife. David's servants went to Abigail at Carmel with the message, "David sent us to bring you to marry him." She got up, and then she bowed down, face to the ground, saying, "I'm your servant, ready to do anything you want. I'll even wash the feet of my master's servants." Abigail didn't linger. She got on her donkey, and with her 5 maids in attendance, went with the messengers to David and became his wife. David also married
Ahinoam.
Ahinoam of Jezreel.
Sure.
Both women were his wives. Saul had married off David's wife, Michal, to Althea, son of Lashes, who was from Gal.
It's again, thank you, Bible, for clearing that up for us. Yes. Again, if you're new to this, though, or need a reminder, this is a time where polygamy was abound, and you know, it's just there. It's not there offering any reflection. It's just a fact of and the times. And verse 44 to that end, I've completely forgotten as well that Saul just kind of done away with one little line there, that Saul could do that as king, kind of move David's wife around. So sorry, ladies. At the same time, focus on Abigail, who again, this is the results of her diplomacy, you know, and it wasn't so she wasn't, you know, she was playing a long game. Let's put it that way. She was it's, to me, it reads as if she had a hunch that, you know, things with Nabal would take, like it said in the message, boomerang back to him. You know, it's like that's not also there for a reflection on God is just going to punish somebody just because they're evil. It's more of a illustration of that this is a bit of a fable. And you know, and that Nabal had what was coming to him. And it's more about Abigail negotiating her way and out of that troubled marriage into hopefully something better with David, even if he does have other wives. The best she can do. Yeah.
There's a little blurb in the Woman's Bible that talks about Abigail's 5 female servants.
Oh,
5 young women who served the newly widowed Abigail, who was beautiful, intelligent, and a prominent citizen of Carmel, accompanied her when she accepted David's marriage proposal. That Abigail had such a large number of attendants signaled her high status prior to marrying David. These women did not immediately enjoy a comfortable life with David, however. They joined his band of fugitives and led an unsettled life in the wilderness, where they endured captured by the marauding Amalekites until David and his men rescued them.
okay.
Okay.
Leave no
That's
stone
awesome.
unturned. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm looking too at a footnote here in Robert Alter's book, translation, where he says that that little throwaway line in verse 44 about Michal, David's wife, and Saul, it was a political move by Saul to deprive David of one claim to the throne by removing the connection through marriage with the royal family. So there you go.
And mine says she's later returned to David
Aha.
before he becomes king of Israel.
Got it.
So she gets moved around a couple times.
There you go. Okay.
Keep your suitcase.
Yeah.
Never
They
know.
put her on Southwest. Yeah. Wow. David, not King David. I thought you were going to say something. Nope.
No, I was
Just
just kind
enjoying
of-
the drama. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking, you know, how different it is that the women are basically treated like property, and that Abigail behaves shrewdly, especially in the light of when Nabal dies, then she doesn't necessarily inherit. You know,
Yeah.
it goes to his first son, and depends on what he was like, what mom would have. So this was kind of protection for her as well. Not absolute protection, because like I say, but still, it's a completely foreign culture that, you know, the Saul can just, you know, take David's wife away and bestow him on someone else, and it's just the way that that whole thing just stood out to me. The status of women in that particular culture at that time.
I also wonder if she even had a choice about marrying David.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy in charge of an army who was going to murder everybody because they didn't get lunch. And he's like, I want you to marry me. I'm not sure she's got a lot of like
So true.
options. Like, I think she probably doesn't want to get murdered.
Yeah, exactly.
And that makes her shrewd, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. All right, moving right along. Chapter 26. Would anyone like to read Another translation, maybe?
I can read from the NRSV.
All right, that sounds great. It's a shorter chapter, so you can read it if you want about halfway or,
I'll go to 13 and then we'll see where we're at.
okay,
Maybe a little longer.
Okay.
Then the Ziphites came to Saul at Gibeah, saying, David is in hiding on the hill of the Hakilah, which is opposite Jeshimon. So Saul rose and went down to the wilderness of Ziph with 3,000 chosen men of Israel to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Saul encamped on the hill of Hakilah, which is opposite Jeshimon, beside the road. But David remained in the wilderness. When he learned that Saul had come after him into the wilderness, David sent out spies and learned that Saul had indeed arrived. Then David set out and came to the place where Saul had encamped. And David saw that the place where Saul lay, with Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army. Saul was lying within the encampment, while the army was encamped around him. Then David said to Ahimelech, the Hittite, and to Joab's brother Abishai, son of Zeruiah, who will go down with me into the camp to Saul? Abishai said, I will go down with you. So David and Abishai went to the army by night. There Saul lay sleeping within the encampment, with the steer stuck in the ground at his head, and Abner and the army lay around him. Abishai said to David, God has given your enemy into your hand today. Now, therefore, let me pin him to the ground. With one stroke of the spear, I will not strike him twice. But David said to Abishai, do not destroy him, for who can raise his hand against the Lord's anointed and be guiltless? David said, as the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him down, or his day will come to die. Or his day will come to die. We will go down into battle and perish. Lord forbid that I should raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. But now take the spear that is at his head and the water jar, and let us go. So David took the spear that was at Saul's head and the water jar, and they went away. No one saw it or knew it, nor did anyone awake, for they were all asleep, because a deep sleep from the Lord had befallen upon them. Then David went over to the other side and stood on top of a hill far away, with a great distance between them. David called to the army and to Abner, son of Ner, saying, Abner, will you not answer? Then Abner replied, who are you that calls to the king? David said to Abner, are you not a man? Who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not kept watch over your lord the king? For one of the people came in to destroy your lord the king. This thing that you have done is not good. As the Lord lives, you deserve to die, because you not kept watch over your lord, the Lord's anointed. See now, where's the king's spear or the water jar that was at his head? So I'll keep going. Saul's recognized David's voice and said, is this your voice, my son David? David said, it is my voice, my lord, O king. And he added, why does my lord pursue his servant? For what have I done? What guilt is on my hands? Now, therefore, let my lord the king hear the words of his servant. If it is the Lord who has stirred you up against me, may he accept an offering, for if it is mortals, may they be cursed before the Lord. But they have driven me out today from my share in the heritage of the Lord, saying, go serve other gods. Now, therefore, do not let my blood fall to the ground, away from the presence of the Lord. The king of Israel has come out to seek a single flea, like one who hunts a partridge in the mountains. Then Saul said, I have done wrong. Come back, my son David, for I will never harm you again, because my life was precious in your sight today. I have been a fool and have made a great mistake. David replied, here is the spear, O king. let one of the young men come over and get it. The Lord rewards everyone for his righteousness and his faithfulness. For the Lord gave you into my hand today, for I would not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. As your life was precious today in my sight, so may my life be precious in the sight of the Lord, and may he rescue me from all tribulation. Then Saul said to David, Blessed be you, my son David. You will do many things and will succeed in them. So David went his way, and David returned to his place.
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay.
So maybe you could say that the incident about Nabal may be kind of there in the previous chapter to kind of set up this idea, or maybe you could even say behind the scenes, Abigail having a good influence on David, that you let God work the stuff out about who's going to be who, and don't take vengeance or retribution into your own hands. Whatever it is, it's all about that verse 9, I think. David saying to Abishai, don't kill him. No one can lift a hand against the Lord's anointed and go unpunished. Probably the most important part for David, go unpunished. It may not be it may not be so much a moral thing as just this is only going to beget more violence, and so that's how you get to this kind of strange reconciliation in many ways. It's the second time David is spared Saul's life now. The other one being in the cave, I think, was the first one. Yeah.
I like
I
the
think
verse.
yeah, go ahead, Leslie.
I like the verse after that where it says, as the Lord lives, the Lord will strike him down on his day, will come to die, or he will go down into battle and perish.
Exactly.
It's like he's telling it's God's, it's God is the one who's going to be dealing with him, not David.
Yes, exactly.
I think the parallels of this and the incident in the cave are quite telling. I think it could very well be another account of David's and Saul's, the one happening maybe with slightly different details. It seems odd that Saul would, this thing happened in the cave, and he would swear he would never go after David again, and then several chapters later, then he's going after him again. And it's so parallel. And what it does, it both it presents Saul in a very negative light, and it really kind of is a eulogy, or really plays David up as the hero who won't, even though he's being pursued by the king and he's going to kill him, he won't turn his hand and king him and kill the king. And so it's really interesting how First Samuel is making such a villain of Saul, such a hero of David, and kind of combining, I would say, several different accounts into and in typical Old Testament or Bible fashion, they don't try to harmonize them and make them into one account, but they add them all together, put them all in, even though they might be possibly at least referring to the same incident. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah. There's no edits really in the Bible. It's you just retell it.
Yeah.
And just keep them all in there. Yeah, exactly.
I was also thinking that it's a way to make David being the one out in the wilderness being pursued actually seem stronger. It's not that he's weaker than Saul and has to live in the woods. It's that he has the power to take Saul's life and has chosen not to.
Yeah.
So it's a way to spin that power differential in a way that like makes David still look good, I think.
That's right. Even if he's still, he's still a little rough around, I don't want to say ruddy, but rough around the edges. Because that cave scene, that's chapter 24. Remember, Saul was using the restroom. Again, as the writer's trying to humiliate Saul as much as possible. And David cuts off a piece of his cloak to show him, and it's basically another euphemism to say, like, I could have cut a little closer to the skin, if you know what I mean. But I spared your life, and then that was supposed to be it, and now here we go, we have this again. And David is still a bit ruthless, but it's similar to Abigail, that shrewdness, that the wisdom will kind of be repeated in David a little bit. I think.
And in
Okay,
this
good.
particular instance, he's definitely not afraid to throw Abner under the bus.
Yeah, exactly. He can't stand that guy. They have no love for each other. Yeah.
Yeah, it's your fault. It's your fault. You weren't doing your job. You should have been
Yeah.
watching more carefully. You're supposed to be guarding the king. So, yeah, I imagine Abner had a rough evening after that with Saul. I won't.
Exactly. Exactly.
Which isn't even that fair, because he says that was a sleep that the Lord put on them.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's like some kind of supernatural sleep, but he's still expecting for Abner to be awake and guarding.
Yeah, isn't that funny? That's a bit like the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart, where they get somebody must have asked it. I always imagine this again around a campfire and a child like Gunner's age going, but wouldn't they wake up? And they go, you're right. So the Lord must have put a deep sleep upon them. Oh, okay.
Yeah, although David is very willing to take the credit for not killing the king, he's also very willing to assassinate Abner's character and try to drive a wedge there. So it isn't like
Yeah.
he's compassionate and loving towards all. I think he's looking for the main chance here. But anyway, so it's interesting.
Exactly. All right. How about we can do chapter 27, I think, and then for sure we'll be able to finish off next week, I think. Yeah. So, let me pull up chapter 27. Oh, it is very short, yeah. Let me read, I'll find a different translation. I'll do Robert Alter's translation. Robert Alter's translation for the euphemism for men who pee on walls. Literally, the word he uses is pisser. Pisser. So apparently, and he's trying to get back. And now this is now a PG-13 Bible study. Alter went back to the Hebrew and tried to figure out what's the best word that we can come up with. That was what they were going for, and that was it. Something very derogatory. Yeah. Could have been worse, I think. Okay, chapter 27. As David said in his heart, now I shall perish one day by the hand of Saul. There is nothing better for me than to make certain I get away to Philistine country. Then Saul will despair of seeking me any more through all the territory of Israel, and I shall get away from him. And David arose, and he crossed over, he and the 600 men who were with him, to Achish, son of Maoch, king of Gath. And David stayed with Achish in Gath, he and his men, each man with his household. David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Jezreelite, and Abigail, the wife of Nabal the Carmelite. And it was told to Saul that David had fled to Gath, and he no longer sought after him. And David said to Achish, if pray I have found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in one of the outlying towns that I may dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal town with you? And Achish gave him Ziklag on that day. Therefore, as Ziklag belongs to the kings of Judah until this day. And the span of time that David dwelled in the Philistine country was 1 year and 4 months. And David went up and his men with him, and they raided the Geshurite and the Gerizite and the Amalekalite, for they were in the inhabitants of the land of old, till you come to Shur and to the land of Egypt. And David struck the land, and he left not a man or woman alive. And he took sheep and cattle and donkeys and camels and clothes, and he returned and came to Achish. And Achish said, where were you raiding now? And David said, the Negev of Judah and the Negev of the Jerahmeelites and the Negev of the Kenites. And neither man nor woman did David leave alive to bring to Gath, thinking, lest they tell about us, saying, thus did David do. And such was his practice all the time he dwelt in Philistine country. And Achish trusted David, saying, he has surely become repugnant to Israel, and he will be my perpetual vassal. And it happened, I'm sorry, is there more to that at that time? Oh, no, that's right. This is a discrepancy here in the text about the chapter divisions, which came many, many centuries later. So let me just read this beginning of 28, and we might end up rereading it next week. And it happened at that time that the Philistines had gathered their ranks for the army to do battle with Israel. And Achish said to David, "You surely know that with me you must sally forth in the ranks, both you and your men." And David said, "Then you yourself know what your servant will do." And Achish said to David, "Then I shall make you my bodyguard for life." So that's kind of it. They feel there's a discrepancy. They're feeling like that was part of the previous chapter. So
So he's
Well,
a
it's-
mercenary?
kind of, yeah.
It's still a pretty, it's an odd disjunction there because, you know,
Yeah.
Saul has just said, "I'm not going to go after you," blah, blah. David, it's all warm and fuzzy. And then in chapter 27, it's all turned around, you know.
Right.
And David, in fact, it's turned around to the point that David goes to the Philistines. Now, I don't know what's going on here. It may be a justification for why David actually consorted with the Philistines, and then he lied to the king about where he was attacking people, and he killed everyone, so there were no witnesses to show that he wasn't actually attacking Israel, but he was attacking other cities. But this is really odd. This is really a disjunction. It doesn't paint David in a very good light that he's putting them all to, he's putting them all to the band, to the sword, killing everyone, so there are no witnesses. And then he lies about it, and it's just really not, and it does not fit well with the previous chapter. It just seems
It
like
doesn't. Doesn't it kind of reek of making a biblical book by committee, and that they, somebody was adamant that no, this is part of David's story, and that this needs to be told, and then they kind of insert it in here a little bit too. What about all these people in all these many names, the Jerahmeelites, the Canaanites, that's part of his background too, but it's kind of laid in here with no from the previous chapters, no mention of God or the Lord, and any connection to David whatsoever. So it is almost as if the dominant narrator is kind of not sure what to do with this text either, just kind of reporting it like a news bulletin. Yeah.
They're putting it in, but they're putting it in a way that to try to make David look as good as possible at the same time.
Exactly.
And they're trying to make David look good when, maybe there were some parts of David's character and things that he did in order for his own advantage that maybe don't, on close examination, don't look so good. Yeah.
That's the hard part about biblical writers and not wanting to cut out things, when you kind of go back in the editing instead of it's like redacting, it's like if they realized they could have done that, they probably should have. Yeah.
So not only did he not only did he kill these people, but he was lying to the guy who gave him refuge and even gave him a town for his fortress there. So so.
Now you could argue that this is because it's Philistines, who cares? I mean, that could be Israel's point of view, is like, well, it's Philistines, so they're not human anyway, basically.
So so David flew to refuge to this guy, but we don't have to consider him, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, he's not like us, so whatever happens there is fine. Whereas probably the most important thing is that David is getting away from Saul, proactively. Just going to move away to a place where Saul won't be bothered with me,
And building up his wealth.
Yeah, exactly. And lying low, look a little bit like a snake in the grass, just waiting for the right time. Saul won't live forever. So we'll see what happens. Woohoo! Which I think is what people keep saying about what's going on in the news right now. This is what happens.
Yeah.
Yes, we will.
They both stay.
Right. Well, thanks everybody, and holding all your prayer requests up, and the ones I think I've got it of which ones should go on the prayer list officially or not. But if you're ever any doubt, please send me an email and confirm you want something on or not on. That might help too. I'm afraid always during the holidays I've missed a few prayers. Let's see. Thank you all. Take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.